Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of LLD Conversations. I'm your host for today, David Brackett, and I'm joined by a thought leader in our industry and someone who I think you're going to get a lot out of today's short conversation. As I give him the introduction, I'm going to read a brief bio from Dr. Craig Cornelius, who's joining us today, all the way from Mountain View, California. Craig is a senior software engineer on the international engineering team at Google, joining back in 2007. He works on language support across Google, including Android, Search, Gmail, and Google Translate. He contributes to the open source Unicode Standard and the work of the Unicode Technical Committees. Craig's indigenous language experience began with Cherokee, and he continues to collaborate on projects with the Cherokee Nation. He served on the advisory board of the Australian Research Council's Center of Excellence on the Dynamics of Language, and serves on the governing boards of the Endangered Languages Project, Translation Commons, and Endangered Alphabets. His recent work with indigenous languages include Zero to Digital, a guide to bring your language online with Translation Commons, and development of keyboards for indigenous languages. He has enjoyed a variety of academic industry positions, from teaching to research and medical imaging. Craig holds a BA in chemistry and mathematics from Luther College, and both the Ph.D. in chemistry and the MS in computer science from Stanford University. Dr. Craig, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, we've got some great questions for you today, and I'm really excited for our community here to learn what you all are doing. It's really groundbreaking, and I can't wait for more people to hear about it. So before we get started, we want to learn a little bit more about you. How did you get started in the language industry?
But quite by accident. My previous full-time job was in medical imaging, and I was in Denmark and doing my part, making digital x-rays and CT scans and MRIs look right on the screen. The doctor came to me and said, "We're losing patients." And he pointed out to me that we were not sorting the list of patients in alphabetical order in Danish. We were doing it in English. And he explained to me that Danish sorting is not the same. I called my boss at that point and said, "We got to fix this." And he said, "No, all you have to do is tell them to think in English and everything will be fine." Well, that was not very satisfying to that customer, and it did not result in good things for our company as well. That company is gone now, and I started working for Google, and that was the story that I think got me my job at Google. Since then, I've been learning about language technology, primarily about how to do the writing systems of different languages. And about 12 years ago, I met someone quite by accident from the Cherokee Nation. He put me in touch with his friends and family back in Oklahoma, and we started working on ways that we could support the Cherokee writing system in Google Search, in a user interface for Google Search, keyboards and fonts for them on different devices, finally getting that into mobile. And that has led me in all sorts of interesting directions with indigenous communities around the world, some small, some very large. But it's a fascinating thing when people discover that, hey, I can write my language on the internet. I can add comments in social media. I can actually post things in my writing system so that people around the world can read this. They get very excited, and I get excited when they are happy about these newfound capabilities for their communities.
So fascinating, the work that you're doing. I'm so curious to ask you, tell me about the Zero to Digital project.
I got associated with Jeanette Stewart and her organization, Translation Commons. We met through a group called iMug, which is a local group that talks to translators. Translation professionals come together. And Jeanette told me about the work that Translation Commons was doing. I said, well, we could do something practical for this. And a few years ago, we were talking to UNESCO about the International Year of Indigenous Languages. Google got involved to some extent with that. Translation Commons was involved. And I said to Jeanette and others, we need a way of telling people what the steps that they can take to go from no presence on the internet for their languages to fully digital. And those involved simple steps like, do you have a writing system for your language? It's basically a flowchart of questions that says, do you have this? If you do, then go here. If your writing system is standardized, then you can proceed this way. Otherwise, you need to work on standardization of your writing system through Unicode. And each of these steps leads people closer and closer to being able to have full capability of their writing system on the internet. It does not mean that every language is supported. Languages without writing systems are tough to get on the internet. And that's where my participation in the Endangered Languages Project has been very interesting and beneficial. And also work with the other organizations such as UNESCO and the Australian project that was mentioned earlier. They are covering much more than I do. I'm more the language geek here in terms of the writing systems. Smart people who work on more advanced things like speech to text, text to speech, machine translation. They build on the things that we do, but they're a whole lot smarter and they know more about language than I do.
Well, you make it seem so simple. And when you're doing that, and what are the largest challenges that you come across when you're taking a language like Cherokee and putting it into digital and putting it onto the keyboard? What are the biggest challenges?
In the case of Cherokee and some other communities that I've worked with, they've done the hard work of saying, here is our writing system. Here are the actual symbols we're going to use. In the case of Cherokee, they have 85 syllables, not letters, but individual syllables, which were developed 200 years ago. They've done the hard work in the Cherokee Nation of standardizing those, going to the Unicode Standards people and say, here's our character set, here is what we want to use, here are the shapes for the characters, and getting it into the Unicode Standard, which takes sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 years, is a big step, because once it's in the Unicode Standard, each character in that writing system can then be supported easily by any company that supports Unicode. And in today's world, every company who wants to be on the internet is supporting Unicode. 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, but the internet has made it necessary for everyone to use their writing systems on mobile devices to have it standardized in Unicode. And the Unicode process is well documented, well defined, and has a lot of really good people, linguists and computer professionals, and all sorts of people who are excited about language and extending the internet and its capabilities to everyone.
Wow, so fascinating, Craig. And when you look ahead, what trends or advancements do you foresee coming in the next 3 to 5 years as it pertains to technology for writing systems?
I think the process, which has been going for several years, is going to advance. We're seeing with the Unicode Standard many more people around the world saying our writing system has been used by hand for a long, long time, but now we want to get it so people can text on their phones to each other. And so people are becoming aware of the standardization process, working with either with their own communities only, or finding someone who is a technical person to help them advance it through the standards process. So I think more and more languages are going to develop their own writing systems into digital form. We also see that people are inventing writing systems for languages to distinguish them from other ones, perhaps in the same country, but they don't want to use an existing language or writing system like the Latin letters or the Cyrillic letters or Devanagari or other existing writing systems. They want to distinguish their writing systems from others. That's a very hard step to take because it takes time to educate people in using a writing system. It takes time to get it into schools. It takes time to develop a literature. It takes time to demonstrate that the writing system is not something someone just invented as a school project, but it's actually something that's organic within the community and has real value to the community. So that process of inventing, educating, and promulgating the writing system so it's real is something that only succeeds in a very few cases. One good example is the Adlam writing system, which was developed by two brothers about 30 years ago. It is starting to be used by millions of people in Africa, all across the southern edge of the Sahara, for a language which is called Fulfulde or Pular. And that's one of the rare exceptions to the general case where a writing system doesn't get a lot of traction. But when it does, it can transform people's lives. It gives them the ability to read and write in their own language, to educate their children in their own language, to develop not only a sense of identity, but also to have real practical benefits, such as they can build educational materials based upon these and develop an education system for their people that is not imposed on a colonial framework such as French, English, or Arabic in other parts of the world.
Right. I mean, such a huge educational opportunity for those communities to have that access to it they didn't have access to prior to that. Is there a language right now that you're able to share that you are working on next or that's coming in the pipeline?
I've got about 7 or 8 different keyboards that I'm working on, some of them for languages of India, a couple for languages of Africa. Some of them are fairly widely used. Others are not so widely adopted. I'm working with an academic in England, but he is from Africa. He's excited about a writing system which hasn't been used widely, but he thinks that it has real value for the people in a community there. And I hope that he will be able to get that successfully used by his people. We are developing a keyboard for it. He's done the hard work of getting the Unicode standard there, but we'll see how widely it's adopted. He's written a book on it.
Wow.
We've developed something that can indeed be used, but he has to find the community to adopt it. That's one kind of a long shot, but continuing to work with things like the Fulfulde language and the Adlam, we're doing things such as making sure that their writing system not only works for text documents, but for spreadsheets and for slide presentations and all sorts of other things online. There are lots of people now developing online YouTube videos and teaching people how to use the language. So the momentum in this case is really strong. Others, it is not. There are small communities such as Native American groups. There are pockets of people in parts of India that I didn't even know existed that I'm working with. But they can all ask if we can help them, and we negotiate with them to understand what they really need and see if we can indeed provide some tools that will move them along in this digitization process.
The work you're doing, Dr. Craig, is riveting. It's inspiring, and I'm just so grateful that you have this vision to be able to expand these languages and making them digital. For those of people listening, Dr. Craig, what ways do you see that they could be able to help support this mission or help support Translation Commons? How can other people get involved?
Very good question. Translation Commons is a volunteer organization, and Jeanette Stewart and others have come together to make it possible for people with technical backgrounds, for linguists, professional linguists, for academics, and people in industry to donate their time and efforts to supporting language communities that are not that may not have those resources themselves. So to volunteer as a linguist or an administrator, an organizer, we have positions within Translation Commons for project managers, which help rather disorganized people such as myself actually make our work more effective. And then another big piece is if people know of a language community that needs resources, bring that to our attention and connect us with those groups so that we can help them work through what they need to do to move toward digitization of their language and full support. The ultimate goal of my work is to make it that this thing in people's pockets can let them communicate with their family and friends in their own languages without having to resort to a colonial language. That builds, that's the goal, and people can help in many ways with that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, just want to say thank you again, Dr. Craig, for taking the time to meet with us today. Thank you for the work that you are doing, the impact you are having on so many communities, creating opportunities, education through this work is phenomenal. What's the best way that people could get a hold of you if they did have further maybe follow-up questions or?
I can be contacted through translationcommons.com. Or I'm sorry, translationcommons.org. And that's probably the best way of getting in touch with people. We also have a place on the website under keyboards for people to request keyboard work, and that will get to us, and we can get back to people. This isn't the sexiest part of language stuff. Everybody thinks, machine translation, that's the next thing we want to do. Well, if we can get people typing and using their language, that's a step on the way toward full utilization of their language on the internet. That's the direction we can help them start on.
Yeah, I have to start there. Well, again, thank you so much, Dr. Craig, for taking the time, and can't wait to share your message with the world.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.